Hey, everybody. This is Doug Mark, President at Learning Zen. Welcome back to 5 Franchising Questions. I'm here with my guest today, Julianne Sullivan. Julianne is a business culture expert. She's written numerous books. She hosts business roundtables. She's got a BA in psychology and a master's in accounting, and she's received numerous awards in excellence from training and presentations. Julianne is truly a catalyst of culture. Thank you so much for joining our call, Julianne.
I'm thrilled to be here.
Well, this is actually round two for us because we had some technical difficulties round one. And it's important for people to, I think, talk about those kind of things because when we're building training materials, we often have to reshoot things over and over again. And the key is to not get upset. Things happen and we do it again. So thank you so much for gracing us with your time twice already. We certainly appreciate that. Um, we obviously are in the training business and we support a lot of people in the franchising industry and the podcast itself is about, franchising. But could you tell us just a little bit about yourself so that all of our clients and people watching and followers know a little bit about you and your business?
Sure. Well, you mentioned that I have an undergraduate degree in psychology and a master MBA in accounting. And when I decided I didn't want to do anything more with accounting and finance, when I came out of that arena, I realized that I had a very unique perspective about business. I understood business functionality, and I also had a very keen, insightful way of understanding the workforce, the people. And about that time, an expression called employee engagement came about. It was in 2009, and it was just a perfect avenue for me to follow. And through experience and more research, I'm kind of a research nerd, and I like to see what is going on in the research world regarding workforce. And that's been changing over the years. Employee engagement became the employee experience. From the time you post a job to the time people leave your establishment. And then that grew into this umbrella known as company culture. And like I said, it's been a perfect fit for me. I had a podcast for many years and was fortunate enough to lightly stock 63 C-suite leaders that already had great cultures and dig into what they were doing to create that and sustain that. And I came away being pretty darn smart on the in that area.
I've been able to actually sit in on a couple of your sessions, and I feel extremely lucky and fortunate that you were able to lead those for my team. And I've realized how important culture is. It's always been something that we've talked about in franchising because we always talk about the fact when we work with a franchisor, one of the first courses you want to build and make sure that your individual units can understand is what is this corporate company culture that you built that is associated with your brand so that we can pass that along to every single unit. I think it's obviously one of the most important things franchise brands do. What about for new brands and new businesses? I feel like that are maybe they've got 5 or 10 units and they're still, I think, maybe identifying what their culture is. Are there things that you could do to kind of help shape that culture from somebody who's not quite sure where it is today?
Yeah, well, first let me say that culture is kind of an elusive word, right? People
Yeah.
don't really know what it is. So I have a very simple definition for what a good culture is. And that is that your workforce gets up in the morning and they want to work for your company. Very simply. I'm all about simple solutions and big results. That's something I've been talking about since I started my business in 2009. And the name of that company, by the way, is Learning Never Ends. And,
Whoa.
that, that's step one. I think what have found is really important, and how I best help organizations is coming up with a long-term plan. Look, culture's not going to happen overnight. The more you ignore it, the more it's going to create itself, and the longer it will take you to turn the corner on creating a better culture. So that's number one. And number two, because I've done so much work in change management, culture is huge and people don't know where to start. So once you have a plan, I really help people take small steps, right? And um, in my book, Blueprint for Employee Engagement, I had 37 small steps, but they seem like small steps, but you could actually spend a month or more on each of those categories to build your culture. So culture is made up of a lot of aspects, and you need to be aware of what's working and what's not working, and what you have to work on today may be different than what you need to work on 6 months from now.
Well, and I think that that really resonated with myself and my team because of the fact that you did facilitate some sessions for us. And I also was able to get your book as part of that. I know when people hire you and have you facilitate sessions for them, you do send them the book. And sometimes it might be Blueprint for Employee Engagement, or it might be Catalyst of Culture. Am I wrong? Do you always send one book or the other?
No, I always, for the employee engagement masterclass, which you took the module on recognition and celebration, I
Yes.
always send out the blueprint for employee engagement, because that online course is built around that book.
Well, and I know recognition was something that I don't think we were talking about as a company, or being mindful of, throughout the year. But I think it's something that we've realized is very important for what we are trying to build here at Learning Zen and at our parent company, Gold Systems. Can you talk a little bit about how important it is for a company to handle recognition, and why recognition is important?
Sure. First of all, I want to talk about what I saw as the movement within your leadership team. And that was, they first came away with, well, I'm not patting everybody on the back. Everybody shouldn't get a prize, right? So that was the starting point after our first session. And then
Right.
I saw everyone move to, oh, what you're talking about is being timely and specific, and not so much saying, hey, you're doing a great job every day to every person.
Right.
And that is the kind of movement and change of mindset that I always see when I do these types of facilitations, because everybody has their own notion about what, let's say, recognition means. And then we get deeper, right?
Yeah.
And like in the beginning, everyone said, how are we going to spend 3 hours on recognition and celebration? But we didn't have any problems doing that, did we?
We could have done it for a month. You're right. Yeah. Could have done it for 30 days. Yeah. Um, I know it was something that was surprising a bit, I guess, for me. And I think my experience might be important, because I think there are other business leaders that maybe aren't sure what they'd be getting in the end. And what I was most impressed with was this notion that we were able to, in a very short amount of time, create what I felt like was a very safe space to share. And I think you were able to get people in a room to open up and talk about things that normally wouldn't be discussed. And I think that's something that I really keyed in on. And I guess I wanted to just kind of ask you, what are the things that you're doing, I guess, to create that safe space? Because when you can get people to open up like that, I think you can tackle the challenges and recognize the changes that need to be done. But man, it's hard to break through those walls. So the safe space is important. How do you do that?
Yeah, safe space is very important. And one of the 4 pillars that I have created for a great workplace culture. And the first part of that, since we're doing this virtually now, is I never record the sessions. People will react differently or not react because they are being recorded. So I never record the sessions. That's number one.
Yeah.
The other half of that is I do have a gift of being extremely intuitive. Now, maybe that's because of all of my daily deliberate choice to learn about human behavior. Maybe some of it's genetic, I don't know. But I have a structure whenever I work with a company or a team or an individual. But that structure, let's say I have the walls and the furniture and the pictures on the wall and the lamps, that's all created by our interaction. So I'm never closed to the people that are there because each person is unique. And I think you saw that when we had our meetings.
Yeah. I mean, very unique, diverse group of people on our leadership team. And I think
Absolutely.
that's why I was so impressed by how quickly we made progress. And I think that was a really great takeaway for me. And it's another reason why it's going to segue into this next question really well, I hope as well. But it's why Julianne and I really want to continue working together because I see the value she can bring to a lot of our clients. And we are in the business of helping people, both you and Learning Zen. So that's wonderful. And it will be the segue into this very long-winded question now. So I know what we just talked about, and you just mentioned it actually. You talked about the fact that we did our sessions online and we actually used like a Zoom session. So how has, how has your training evolved over the years? And what I mean by this is um, where we're at right now with our training, the way that you presented it to our team, we did that online via a Zoom session. Can you talk a little bit more about all the changes to your business and how you're currently delivering that training?
Well, honestly, I find Zoom to be really great. I find it to be very intimate as opposed to being in a large room with 150 people or 500 people or 1,000 people. When I think, you and I were talking about this would work for like up to 20 people as the
Yeah.
max. But when you are working with people on Zoom, and as you know, I set the ground rules up front. And that is when you come, everyone on the team, it's not about me, it's about you and your team, needs you to be fully engaged. That means you have to have your camera on and not be doing other work and be present for the time we are together. And I was very open. In fact, I sent everybody an email beforehand saying, this is what we need. And if for some reason you can't do that, then don't show up. No questions asked.
Yeah.
That's fine. I also always make sure that I allow people to pass.
Oh, right. That was an important one for our group, I felt like. Yeah.
And that goes back to the safe environment. Now, you will have noticed that sometimes people pass, but then at the end, I always say, for someone who didn't make a comment, would they like to make a comment now? And I don't think we ever got anyone who didn't comment by the end of the session, right?
No, we
Because
did.
other
Yeah.
people make them feel more comfortable about what they have to share.
Yeah.
So anyway, but you asked me, so everything is virtual right now.
Great.
And it has, although I just signed on to do something for 100 people, but most of the time I am working in smaller groups, and that is my sweet spot.
Yeah.
So for me, I really like it. For other people, they may not, but for me, that is my sweet spot to work with a smaller group. Plus the presentation is different, right? If I am really working with people, if we're a small group, if we're 100 people, 1,000 people, right, really open and big, then I'm just really talking to space. Doesn't mean I don't have something to share, but there isn't a team sharing, right? It's just mainly me as a talking head,
Yeah.
honestly, right? Uh, the message that people get from that, as opposed to interaction, and you saw I'm big on interaction.
Huge.
I think people take away a lot more with interaction.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what's really nice about your offering is that there's a few different facets to it. So there's the book, and then there's the live facilitated sessions, and then there is a follow-up online component to it as well. Is that right? Can you talk a little bit about that online component?
Yes. Originally, this was created as an online course, but this is a unique online course, not like any other I have ever seen. Most online courses are for one person, maybe a team, to watch something and take some kind of test or quiz to move on to the next module, we'll call them. My online course is one in which people can watch it individually, but I have prescribed questions that instigate engagement through discussion. And so companies can buy that and facilitate it on their own, but not everybody has a good facilitator within their company. Now, larger companies, they have learning and development departments, and the people within those departments are great facilitators because hopefully they've gone to trainings and workshops and conferences, and that's what they study, right? Is how to be good facilitators. What you and I are doing together will give people the opportunity that don't have that facilitator within their company to have a facilitator, me, come in and facilitate these sessions. So can someone watch the 7-minute video and answer the questions by themselves? Yes, but I call it the Employee Engagement Masterclass because it is geared towards engagement. And engagement is the first step in creating a great company culture.
There you go. There's a massive tip for people right there, which is awesome. That's the perfect soundbite as we're walking away from this, thinking about other little bits we can use later on. So I added a different question here, and it was just because of as I was sort of reading through Catalyst of Culture, but I know it's something that I want to do more with our particular brand, but in Catalyst of Culture, you've got a chapter that's talking about creating fun as business culture. And what I really found interesting in that is that the person who you were communicating with and interviewing at that time is an accounting company. And so you've managed to find a fun accounting company, which I didn't know existed, but tell us more.
Me neither. That's why I had to interview Bill Hageman, because it was like I was an accountant, right? So
yeah, because I was just going to say you went to school for that as well. And so had you ever heard of that before, a fun accounting company?
Well, actually, now that you mention it, the last company I worked for when I was in California was a public accounting firm. And during tax season, we were forced, I put that in quotes, to have fun. So we broke up into teams within the office. And every team had to leave the office for at least 2 hours once a month and have fun. A harbor cruise, go to a museum, whatever. Go bowling. We had to go have fun. And then every team a different team every week was in charge of food, bad food to eat, snacks and stuff like that.
Treats.
Yeah.
We call these treats at my house.
And
Yes.
I always said I worked harder there and had more fun there than any place I've ever worked.
Wow. That's awesome. And I think it's important that when people are coming into work and coming into their jobs, that there is an element of this is a safe space. This is a healthy environment. This is a fun place. So I think by bringing those things in, obviously, all it's going to do is improve culture, improve employee retention, make it easier to get new hires in as well. So
again, always going back to that your workforce wakes up in the morning and they want to go to work, not only to do their best for the company, but to do their best for themselves. And the company instills that in each individual.
And that's very important to take. That's a great another takeaway soundbite that we can probably track moving on as well. And there's so many quotes in this book and stories about different businesses and things that they did to improve their company culture. So I've really appreciated you sending it along and reading it on my. Actually, I think I bought this one online, and I think you sent me the other one. So I hope that money went directly to you.
At some point.
So
but I just wanted to add real quick, one of the most valuable pieces of my research through interviewing people on the podcast was the companies I spoke to had tens of thousands of employees and 20 employees. They were from every industry. I did 63 of them. I never did the same industry twice. I did companies that were billion-dollar companies and companies that were $100,000 companies. I did companies that have been around for 100 years and companies that had been around for 6 months. And the 4 pillars I came up with were true for every single one of them.
Wow. And you talk a lot about those 4 pillars. I'm going to have us just for a second talk a little bit about bring this back into franchising for a second, because I think that that's one thing that we keep talking about as far as, well, franchisors, the ownership team has, franchisees that work for them. How important is it for the franchisor to be investing in these individual owners and empowering them at the unit level versus at the corporate office?
Well, there's an issue there. I just listened to Catherine Munson yesterday, and the issue I'm going to talk about is not going away and could get much worse or could get much better. But there is a thin line between how much a franchisor can do when it comes to employees of a franchisee without becoming an employer. And according to Catherine yesterday, that is not going to go away. That is actually going to bubble up, so to speak, with the new administration. And I won't get into the legalese about it because I could never talk about it as well as Catherine anyway, who, by the way, for people who don't know, is the CEO of Fast Signs and right now president of the International Franchise Association. So she knows what she's talking about. She's been on Capitol Hill many, many times. And because of that, the franchisors, I think, instill good culture through their brand, because if you don't have a good brand, you can't, that kind of ties into having a great culture, right? They're in it. They can't really be separated. So for the franchisor, I see everything they do for the franchisee through their branding helps their workforce. And then I think it's up to the franchisee to look at their culture within their individual store or stores. because culture in Kentucky and culture in New York City are different.
Very.
One of the people that I interviewed was Chuck Runyon from Anytime Fitness. And at the time, he was the largest franchise in the world. And one of the reasons they were so successful is he understood that a gym in Tokyo and a gym in LA were different.
Yeah.
Right? That the base was the same, their brand was the same, but there were subtle differences with their clientele, which meant that there were differences in their workforce and the culture that created that.
Well, and what you were talking about as far as joint employer goes, so that's what Julianne was just referencing is this notion that franchisors cannot assert themselves at the employee level of a franchisee unit. They do have the ability to train the franchisee and their manager, but they really need to be able to be careful to separate themselves so that there are no liability issues moving forward. And so it's one of those things where I think they have an opportunity to influence culture, but they can't oversee it at the individual unit.
And what I see for me is I think I'm a bridge.
Yes. From franchisees to franchisors. And I
Correct.
think that is a bridge that is desperately needed. I mean, if you go on LinkedIn and you follow franchising as one of your keywords, you'll see a post, I mean, I would say at least one a week that just talks about the fact that, who are the best franchisee referrals? What I see almost weekly is the best franchisee referrals are from franchisees. Having happy franchisees are going to allow you to sell more individual
Of
units.
course.
So, man, it's so important to remember that we do want to take the time and the investment in our franchisees because they are really going to make the entire brand expansion happen faster, easier, and hopefully keep those brand standards that are so important to those ownership teams.
It's like any business, right? I used to say, of course, we're not doing it now in most places, but I used to say at wing night, you really find out what your brand is, right? And franchising is no different. If your franchisees get together and say, are you having the same problem with corporate as I am? Right?
Yep.
That's not something that's going to bring more franchisees. And let's face it, that's the name of the game, right?
It is.
Building your franchise base. And yeah, so everybody needs to take care of one another, even though there's boundaries. And I think everybody's pretty clear about those boundaries. But I would personally like to see franchisees in some companies that get together more by districts and help each other more.
Yeah. Having a regional district of owners that meet and can talk about their challenges, I think it strengthens their message as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that's
what a
really,
great
really
idea.
important.
Yeah. Can you talk real quickly about normally we'd all be traveling, and we'd be seeing each other face to face and remember when we could hug people? Man, I miss that. But
yeah, you and me
if you
both.
if you were on the road and traveling, do you have any sort of franchise brands that you tend to resonate with?
I don't think so because I guess I would resonate more with service brands than
Yep.
product brands. And I only say that because I know in my consulting work, I have worked more with service companies than, let's say, manufacturing companies.
Yep.
Having said that, people are people.
Yeah. Well, I
And
know that
really all franchising is service, right? They're not manufacturing, I don't think. Maybe.
no, there's a lot of obviously service-based brands, and in particular home-based service-based brands.
But
Uh,
even if you're selling a product, right? Because when last time I was out in public, I did a keynote for R&R Tire in Florida. And now they're selling a product, but it's the service behind the product.
I mean, and when we go to get a meal, isn't somebody providing us a service?
Absolutely.
It,
And people are absolutely right. People who like a certain brand of food, and I don't want to mention one because I don't want to leave anybody else out, right? But let's say you're going for a hamburger, okay? There are a lot of places people go to hamburgers, and people go to those places because they like that hamburger or that chicken sandwich or whatever, right? But it makes a big difference if the service isn't good. People aren't going to go no matter how much they like your burger. They'll find
yep,
another burger they like.
so absolutely true. I mean, I frequent a
And that's
couple.
true for, excuse me, but that's true for maid service. That's true for a handyman. That's true for tires,
Yeah,
right? I continually go. I have a family owned business near me that takes care of they sell tires, but they also service my car. Because of their service, I would never go anywhere else for anything.
yeah. I mean, it's always interesting because I hate to bring politically charged items into conversations that we're
Don't do it.
recording on the web, of course. But there, look, there are brands out there that I might not necessarily love the food or their beliefs, but they might be unbelievable in service, and I will find myself going back because I know what to expect from that service perspective. And
Yep.
good service is hard to find these days, and I realize I probably sound like an older curmudgeon when I say these things, but I'm a pretty easygoing guy with relatively low expectations when I go into most, I would say, dining experiences. And
Remember those?
I'm just, it's weird the things that wow you nowadays. You really take notice of good service, and I think it's in an area where all of the businesses could use a little more training and expertise is on the service side of that and providing that to the customer.
Well, people are going to have to do that. Some people are sitting back on their heels during the pandemic, whether you're listening to this months after we're all vaccinated, or those who want to be vaccinated and the numbers are really going down, or in the midst of it. I am concerned for the companies who are not keeping their eye on the ball when it comes to their culture, because when this all goes full circle, which I do believe at some point it will, there is going to be less talent out there, not more. One of the aspects of life that is raising faster than anything else is people getting business licenses and opening their own businesses.
Wow, and that I didn't even think of. Well, obviously, we've seen a lot of weird changes during COVID, and some business leaders have, jumped right on top of COVID and tried to smother it as much as they could. And they said, you know what, I'm going to shift my business, or I'm going to change what we do, or we used to produce alcohol and now we're going to produce hand
Hand
sanitizer.
sanitizer. Yeah,
You know,
absolutely. Well, one of my titles for change management over the years has been finding opportunities and change. And for the companies who were able to find a different opportunity and shift and move into a more magnanimous, is that a word?
sure
Uh,
is.
uh, uh, Perspective, and not be so egotistical that they weren't willing to shift so they could help the greater good, are going to be the winners,
Yeah.
the big winners, even when they shift back to what they did before. And again, Catherine talked a lot about this yesterday, about how they contacted their customers, letting them know what kind of signage they could do now. to help them through this time. Templates that they created, right, on COVID and masking and rules and regulations and for individual businesses or whatever. So, and again, I think, and for, I don't want to discount that for many, many businesses, this has been horrific.
Yeah.
There was no shift. I get that. There will be a lot of businesses that are gone. But again, I just read an article about Pittsburgh, about some of our restaurants that closed and are never coming back. And then there was a whole list of new restaurants.
Yep.
That
You're right. I think what you're going to see is that, after a forest fire, the soil is rich with minerals, and it's easy, and you start to see that everything starts growing again. So it has been horrific for many, many owners. But throughout a tragedy, oftentimes opportunity is built. And I think that we will see some of that as we move into 2021 and beyond. So it's nice to have some hope that that's out there, which is great.
Yeah, hope is good.
Hope is powerful. I don't think I asked this before, and I only have a couple of questions left, but is there something that a company could do to invest in their own culture that they could start doing tomorrow?
Listen. Listen more to your workforce. In the beginning of the pandemic, I said, okay, now you're not paying for parking for your people to come to work. Then make sure they have a cable long enough to have plugged in, internet, right?
Right.
Give them the $20 for a 100-foot cord or whatever it is, right? Yep. Whatever minuscule it is. Listen and by asking, right? What do you need to do the job we need you to do? That's been very important. And the companies who have listened have a much happier workforce and people who are staying loyal and growing, right? So I would say listen is the first. And that also means listen to by reading and investigating and listening to podcasts, not Facebook and things like that, maybe LinkedIn, business-centric areas.
Yeah.
You can get an idea of what are other people doing. In my industry, what are they doing? And there's plenty of ways to find that out, right? So listening can not only be through your ears, but through your eyes. I think that's really the most important.
And I couldn't agree more. And I think that's something, my point to asking the question was, this is something that they could start doing today. And it is. This is something that, listening is, in being an active listener, it's not just waiting to hear something. Sometimes you have to ask the questions to hear the good and the bad. And so things like a suggestion box, you could put a suggestion box in your office, right? And people could anonymously report things that are going on as well. Is that something that you've ever seen done?
Yeah. And now, of course, right, we don't have a suggestion box in an office in many places, but there are so many other ways you can do that. One of the actions that I take when I work with a company is I like to start out with a survey that I create after talking to people in the company. So again, I have my structure, but it's geared towards specifically to the individual company, and have an outside person do that survey so people understand that it's anonymous, nobody knows where it comes from. And I never, sometimes I always have a box with where people can write in their own words. I never give that to the client, because sometimes they can tell by what's written who it is.
Yes.
But I give them the overview. Hey, you have a challenge in this area, right? So I would say, you can do that virtually through surveys. I know several companies that use Slack or Teams or whatever, and
Yep.
they have channels where challenges are put in where other people can help them with it. Is anybody having this problem with our software? Or many of them have gratitude channels where
Oh,
people can put
what a
in,
great idea.
hey, John helped me today. I want to give a shout out to him for helping me with his project or whatever. So it works both ways, just not negative. It's positive too. And honestly, if you have a safe environment where people can actually put forward challenges they're having, you have a great culture. Because in a
Yeah,
lot of places, I don't want to say anything. I'll get in trouble or they'll think I'm stupid. Anyone who thinks that way is not working in a good culture.
they're not working in a healthy environment. I would agree. What a great idea, though, to have. I mean, basically, we could have virtual suggestion boxes. And I
Absolutely.
love the gratitude channel.
I've seen that work really, really well.
Interesting. I'm still doing my 30 days of gratitude because
Yay.
I've missed, days along the way. So I'm
You're
not to 30
human.
yet. I keep posting. I don't skip a day though. So like I'll post at least 30 posts. So I will get through this, but it's been extremely rewarding for me. And I think it's an important thing because when you're looking for reasons or yeah, to post about gratitude or positivity, you're taking yourself down a virtual road where positivity and gratitude are being flown at your face,
Ingrained. Yeah.
right? Yeah. So I think there are some good positive things by forcing yourself to be in the moment and be aware and conscious of the fact that gratitude is important and positivity is important. And by looking for it, you're going to find that that starts to get ingrained in your thinking as well.
Yeah.
So
Just think of if at the beginning of every team meeting you have, none of this needs to take a long time. You had everybody say one sentence about something they're grateful for, or asked everyone to express gratitude to someone else. I think we did that in your group as
that,
well,
yeah,
right? To everybody on the team and to one person on the team. And it becomes part of that repetition. It's all about repetition.
yeah,
Again, when I saw Catherine Munson speak yesterday, she had a list of acronyms that stood for different things in her office. She's a brilliant woman. She needs reminders too. I
yeah,
have reminders all over my office.
me
We
too.
all need reminders.
Yep, yeah. And sometimes we've got to force those reminders on ourselves. I think we've got to remember to do
Absolutely.
that. Um, so I'm going to close with this one last question, and we're going to do a bit where you kind of describe a couple of pictures that I had scraped off of the internet. Um,
Uh-oh.
but you graciously facilitated a couple of sessions for our leadership team at Gold Systems, our parent company, and I'm wondering if you would talk about a little bit about how the online version is different than in person.
Or you mean online facilitated
Yes.
as opposed to in-person facilitated? When I am facilitating a group, I don't think it's any different whether it's online or in person because I'm still doing interaction. We're doing small enough groups where everyone is visible and engaged. So I don't really think that there is a difference. I don't think people are getting any less if I'm facilitating a session for them online than I would be in person.
And I would say for somebody who sat through those sessions, the only difference would be that you're in the comfort of your own home. And I actually think for some people who might be more on the introverted side, that's going to help them with that, safer feeling to begin with. I'm actually more on that side of things. So I'm much more comfortable in my own home environment. So for me, it might have been better. It might have been a little bit more empowering for me because I was very comfortable with that. But I think, moving forward, I love the fact that you can do an extremely beneficial and helpful session virtually. And I had low expectations and I came out extremely overwhelmingly surprised, happy, elated that we can make real change happen here. And it starts with just a session, and you would see it's amazing how far you can go from just that first session as you start to move forward. So thank you for doing those sessions for our team. It was wonderful.
Well, thank you for those very kind words. I get just as much as my participants do. And if for no other reason, although there's always somewhere in there where my own brain goes, are you listening?
Right.
But I love to watch people progress, blossom, have a new perspective, discover something about themselves. That just really, honestly, brings me joy.
Well, and I think the joy is pretty obvious. What you do, I think, is very rewarding, and you're a helper, and you're seeing these people grow, and I think that's going to lend to your very positive personality, which is pretty darn infectious. So,
Thanks. Well,
wait,
I'm a pebble in a pond kind of person, and if I'm changing one person or moving them or opening their perspective or whatever you want to call it, because I don't really change people, they change themselves. But that goes out to every person that they come into contact with. And on my Facebook page, it says, I just want to change the world one person at a time.
you're doing it. All right, quick little fun session. You're going to tell us about these pictures. First picture. Who's this handsome fella?
That is me and my son. I think about 6 or 7 years ago. Where were we? We were in California, I think near Santa Barbara, walking out on a pier together, and it's Mother's Day.
Wow, that's awesome.
He's a very good human.
Yeah, it sounds like that. I've heard you talk about him before, and I can see it emanates out of you. And wow, that's awesome. I thought that might be your son, but I wasn't entirely sure. So that one was more of the guest. This one made me laugh, so I'm going to ask about it. This is like me on a daily basis, by the way. This is anytime I get surprised.
You know what this means, right? So this was when I first started my podcast. And this is me on a daily basis too. And I do everything in my power to like hone myself in, because I've got this idea and this idea and this idea and this idea and this idea. So I don't even remember who did this for me, but it was perfect. So
yeah, it is perfect. But yeah, so many thoughts are going through this thing all the time. And so that picture was perfect for me. And then last one.
My joyful.
So who is this adorable dog?
That is Joy. I named her Joy so that I would have a walking, living, breathing, positive affirmation. I go home to Joy. I wake up to Joy. I walk with Joy. I feed my Joy. And this was when she came home. She was like 10 weeks old, and she's going to be 5 next month.
She's going to be 5. Wow. Standard poodle?
She is a standard apricot, but right now she is almost, everyone thinks she's a doodle because she is the color of a retriever.
Oh, a golden, yeah.
But she's fabulous. I'm all about training, and a trained puppy just makes a fantastic dog.
I have a dog that's a little naughty sometimes, so she's somewhat trained, and she is a doodle.
And Joy still likes ears. She loves ears.
Loves ears. Oh man, that's awesome. It's just so nice, right? Like owning a dog. It's if you really want to truly see what true love is.
Yep.
Get a dog.
Yeah.
Man.
But it's a lot of work if you want a good dog.
No, this is absolutely true. But yeah, it's unconditional love. They are just they are, their job is to please.
That's right.
Yep.
Yeah. She's a wonderful addition to my life, and living alone through this pandemic, she has been a real treasure for me.
Good. We're all dog people over here at Learning Zen. Almost all of us have dogs, and sometimes there's dogs in the office even. But yeah, we definitely can understand the love that you have for Joy. So that's awesome. Well, Julianne Sullivan, thank you so much for being our guest today. We really appreciate you coming on, sharing your industry expertise with us. And as well, I'm not sure everybody knows this or not, but Learning Zen and Julianne Sullivan are working on a bit of a shared partnership where we can offer Julianne's facilitated sessions and her online sessions to our Learning Zen clients. Thank you so much for coming on the interview today. We really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you so much, Doug. I have a great time with you. It's kind of a bonus to be able to do this twice. And
Kind.
yeah, no, really. And I look forward to working in the future with you and your clientele as well.
Well, thank you. Now, how do our audience get in touch with you? What are your social channels that we should
Okay,
follow?
so there you see my name, Julianne Sullivan.
Okay.
Easy. If you go to Julianne Sullivan on Google, you can't miss me.
Okay.
My website's juliannesullivan.com, and on LinkedIn, I'm Julianne Sullivan. So those are the best places to reach me. And everywhere is my phone number. You can call me, you can connect with me. It's easy.
All right. Well, thank you again, Julianne. We truly appreciate it. Thank you to all of our viewers out there. Please remember to follow us on Facebook, follow us on LinkedIn. We're also on Twitter. Thank you so much, everybody. We'll talk to you next week. Cheers.